VOA News.
And thanks, Paul, for that report. Now, joining us here in our studio is our distinguished guest, Ambassador Olara Otunnu, the President of the Uganda People's Congress and the Ugandan presidential aspirant. He's also a former United Nations Under-Secretary General. Thank you so much for joining us once again, Ambassador Otunnu, Straight Talk Africa.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
It's always a pleasure, of course, to host you.
Thank you very much.
You're most welcome. Also joining us is Major General Kahinda Otafiire, retired but certainly not tired. He is the Ugandan Minister of Trade and Industry, and he joins us live via telephone link-up from the Turkish capital in Ankara. Thank you so much, General, for joining us on Straight Talk Africa. General Kahinda Otafiire, can you hear me? I'm afraid I understand we're experiencing some technical difficulties, but we should be able to get him back shortly on the line. Later in the program, we'll give you, the audience, a chance to call and talk with our guests. The number to call is 202-619-3111. The US country code is 1. Now, in the meantime, I guess we can talk before we get joined by General Kahinda Otafiire. I realized that, in the piece that we just watched, you raised some very interesting questions. You talk about how Uganda, for example, in your view, is in the middle of a major crisis, a grave malaise. What exactly do you mean by that? Is there a really major crisis in Uganda? And if so, what crisis are we talking about?
It is more than a major crisis. It is a grave national crisis that is facing Uganda today. Uganda government, the Museveni regime, has become the poster boy for corruption in Africa. Education for ordinary children and ordinary families has collapsed altogether. The same is true of health services and hospitals. The level of grinding, humiliating poverty in the countryside is difficult to describe. The terror, the intimidation, the police state par excellence under which Ugandans live today, the fraudulent elections exercise, every election conducted by Museveni has been completely fraudulent. And when you combine all these elements, plus the fragmentation of the country, it's been a divide and rule policy deliberately engendered by Mr. Museveni, the better to gain and rule. You see a country that is sitting over an explosive situation. And the elections of 2011 is probably the last window, the last chance to avert the worst from happening. So a lot is at stake. Ugandans look to that as the one hope of peaceful and political change in the country. We must not let them down.
If in fact what you are talking is true, and I don't know really whether the facts bear you out, because I'm
happy to provide the facts and information.
When we talk about education, for example, you know that he has a program which provides, free primary education for most kids. They also have a program that attempts to provide also free primary, free secondary education.
Let me tell you about that. UPE, Universal Primary Education, in Uganda, it has become a byword for collapsed quality education, for the lack of quality education. Mr. Museveni woke up one morning, declared that as of this academic year, all schools are open to all children, is free universal primary education. No investment, no extra classrooms were built, no extra teachers were trained, and so overnight the schools were overwhelmed. You have classes where there are 300 children, 250 children. Impossible to control, impossible to instruct. So these children go to school, they register, they attend, they are not being educated. And in the villages around Uganda today, I grew up in a village, in the middle of nowhere. But from that village, I could go to the next level and to the next level, because the primary school, the 4 years of instruction in my village was quality education with quality teachers. Not today. A child going to school where I went to school and other villages in Uganda have no chance of going to secondary school and to university, becoming engineers and doctors. The parents tell me this over and over again, which is why we now see the mushrooming of high fee-paying private schools where the children of the elite, the clique that rules the country, their children don't go to government schools anymore because those schools have collapsed, and it's the private schools that are now performing. This is a big crisis, a segregation in education within the country.
But I was looking at the most recent, I think, higher school certificate results. And I have to say, frankly, that I was surprised that some schools, for example, in places like northeastern Uganda, in Karamoja, in Soroti, came up with remarkable results.
In spite of the conditions which have been imposed, in spite of materials, scholastic materials, how much better would they be performing if the schools were being serviced, invested in by the government? You look now, the country is not benefiting from the full measure of talent that is represented by the youth of the country. Yes, there will be exceptional children who will tear through the system however difficult the circumstances, but they are exceptional. But the schools as schools, the regions as regions, are no longer performing as before. Look at secondary schools. Most of the secondary schools we grew up hearing about and attending around the country, apart from ones like King's College, Budog, Isaac, Kisubi, they have collapsed. You don't hear about them anymore. You don't hear about them anymore. That is what the Museveni regime has done to education in the country. That is part of the crisis.
You definitely no longer hear about schools like Busoga College Mwiri.
Forget about them.
Nyakasura School, Kigezi College Butoberi, and all that kind of stuff.
These are shadows of their former selves. I've been to all those places.
But if you were to be fair, sincerely...
I'm very fair, actually.
And to talk to us from the deepest, better part of the bottom of your Muchwini heart and soul, what would you say, for example, are some of the things, frankly, that the incumbent government has done that you would consider to be positive? Surely there has to be something. This man has been in power for 25 years.
I've been all over the country. I've searched the breadth and length of the country. The most one can do is scrape the bottom of the barrel. The very fact that one has to ask, what positive things has Mr. Museveni done after 25 years, suggests a fundamental problem. Okay? I've looked at hospitals. You cannot tell me one government hospital which is being built by the Museveni regime. I've looked at secondary school. You cannot point to one quality secondary school built by the Museveni regime. Yes, I saw one road, just one road, from Karoma to the northern town called Arua. One road built by Museveni. The plan had been in place before, but he built it.
What about the road
saw Mbara University. I saw Mbara University. It's a very nice university, a new university built by the Museveni regime. I see the glittering mansions on the hills of Kampala, most of it the looted money, looted from Ugandans.
Do you have any evidence that the money is in fact
yes,
looted?
Actually, you know, there's a whole street called Global Fund Street in Kampala, meaning people say these are the mansions built by the money stolen from Global Fund, meant to fight malaria, tuberculosis, and HIV/AIDS. Because as you know, in Uganda, it was the only place in the whole world where the entire program of Global Fund had to be suspended because they could not trace a cent which had been sent to the country.
What about...
This is why Uganda today is truly the poster boy, the regime is a poster boy of corruption in Africa.
But someone will counter back and say there are probably more people who are educated and that there is also what you would call some sort of relative freedom of the press in the country.
Well, let me tell you about freedom of the press. The other day I was in Lira, made some very innocent comments on radio station. You know what happened to the radio station? First, Mr. Museveni called up the proprietor and lectured him, berated him for 1 hour, got him to sign a public apology, Now they have issued a statement to all radio stations around the country who may have reported on that to apologize.
We have to go for a break.
Very well.
When we come back, you have the opportunity to complete your thought.
Very well.